All right, it's 6 o'clock. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And everyone, remember to turn your cell phones off, turn your microphones on, and speak into your microphones. And we'll have roll call.
Mayor Schoenberger.
Here.
Councillor Quinlan.
Here.
Councillor Anderson.
Here.
Councillor Baker.
Here.
Councillor Becker.
Here.
Councillor Dykes.
Here.
Everyone has a copy of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 8th. Are there any corrections? Hearing none, they stand approved as submitted. Visitors and delegations. There's a Police Department Citizen Award.
Can you turn the mic on, Travis? Thanks. There.
Okay, so I want to present Mr. Hirschfield with a Community Service Commendation Award, and I'll read it to you briefly. On March 8, 2017, Wheat Ridge Police Department put out a statewide broadcast to an Amber Alert regarding two abducted children who were taken from a local hospital. Requirements for a Colorado Amber Alert include, the most significant is the abducted child must be in immediate danger of serious bodily injury or death. As an observant citizen, you observed an Amber Alert vehicle traveling on I-76 in Morgan County, and you immediately made notification to Morgan County Dispatch. With Morgan County Sheriff's Office under Sheriff Dave Martin, and Brush Police Department Sergeant Brandon Flecksteiner immediately responded to your call. The children were discovered and returned to their responsible guardians, and a female was arrested. In light of your quick response as a concerned citizen, you were paramount in helping law enforcement protect two young children from potential serious bodily injury or death as outlined in the Amber Alert. Not only are you an asset to this community, you are an asset to Colorado law enforcement. Without your attention and concern for these two young children, they may have been harmed significantly. Therefore, it is my extreme honor and privilege to present you with the Community Service Commendation Award. This award signifies outstanding community service, which was definitely portrayed by you on March 8, 2017. On behalf of the Brush Police Department, citizens of Morgan County, the state of Colorado, and the children involved in this incident, we thank you immensely.
It was a collective group effort on this for sure, and a number of things that happened different and it wouldn't work out, but remember the dispatcher's name, but she really helped out a lot too. Everybody liked out there, so it was very neat experience, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very much.
Do you want to get in front of the flag or anything? Excuse me. All right. Thank you.
You should have jumped in there.
You can stay or go. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 4B, Brush Chamber Market Survey Presentation.
Back in the beginning of the year, the Brush Area Chamber of Commerce, and Melody, of course, is doing well. As they were selected to be a graduate program for the Colorado Main Street program through the Department of Local Affairs, among the benefits of that was additional funds available for specific, I don't know how to phrase it, but basically they got more money to be able to do specific things for the community. And part of that is $20,000 per year for technical assistance and professional services. And one thing that we were talking about that Brush has not had in a long time is a market study. The last one done was 2003, and so we spoke with the staff at the Department of Local Affairs, and they put an RFP out, and PUMA, Progressive Urban Management Associates, who's going to do the presentation shortly, they were selected for that, and Brad and Andrea have been working on this for the past few months, so they have a brief presentation, brief in comparison to the one we had today, we had about 20-ish people or so in the room here today, local business owners and stakeholders, to hear the full-blown presentation. So they're going to condense it down just for time's sake, but we will have the full study available for anybody who's curious to see it, and we'll get that out to the business community as well. So it's excellent content, and Brad, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tyler, and thank you, Council, for taking the time tonight to hear our report. My name's Brad Siegel. I'm here with Andrea Buglione, and we're with a firm called Progressive Urban Management Associates. We're from Denver. I'm a Denver native. I've been involved in downtown and community development work for about 30 years. I got my start in the lower downtown district of Denver 30 years ago when it was pretty much a vacant warehouse district. And since then, our firm, and we're a small firm, we're a quarter of our firm, so there's 8 of us. Our firm has worked all over the country in a variety of both large cities and small towns on different community development efforts. We're going to walk you through some of the highlights of the work that we've done. The objectives of the market study, first and foremost, was to update market information since 2003. So it's been 15 years since Brush has sort of taken has assessed where are we in the market, and then maybe more importantly, the world has changed pretty dramatically in just the last 15 years. So particularly as it affects retail and it affects different opportunities for the town, it was thought to be timely to really update the information. Also, we were hoping to, how do we leverage some of the investment the town has made in Brush, particularly the downtown area. Since this project was sponsored by Colorado Main Street, a lot of the focus is on downtown Brush. And as you all know, the town has spent considerable resources in improving the downtown area, particularly the new streetscape. So how do we take that investment and really leverage that into more prosperity, into more businesses? And then lastly, the market assessment is not just market information, but also recommendations, different ideas for the chamber, for the town, and for other partners on how to improve the downtown area. In terms of our process, we've been at it for about 5 months. We've been in town a couple of times, actually three times. We've also retrieved a lot of data. We have different market sources that we look at. And we've also undertaken a survey of Brush residents, which we'll share with you tonight. We think you'll find that's pretty interesting and revealing. Study area for this, certainly the town, which is the map on the left. The downtown area is a white dashed area within. We also looked at a 30-minute drive time of Brush as a primary market area. So it includes Fort Morgan. It doesn't quite get up to Sterling, but there's about a 30-minute drive time that's illustrated on the map on the right. There are also, we identified several destinations in town and around town that draws beyond that 30 minutes. But in terms of a reasonable market area, in consultation with city staff and with the chamber, we thought these were reasonable areas to look at. There's a whole variety of market information in this report, and we won't necessarily get into the details tonight. But we looked at all different sectors that are driving the economy in Brush. We also looked at how do we distinguish between Brush and Fort Morgan. You are one market area, but this study is being prepared for and is intended to provide ideas specifically for Brush in terms of how Brush can really distinguish itself and try to achieve economic development here within that market area. Certainly housing is something we've looked at. It's a pressing need. I don't need to tell you all that. We'll touch on that in our recommendations, which will come up later. The graph on the lower left are building permits for housing in Brush. And you'll see after the recession in 2008, the market hasn't picked up on housing. And that actually seems to be one of the most pressing needs right now in terms of driving economic development for the town. We looked at sales tax, we looked at business mix. Andrea and another colleague from our office spent some time here on the street inventorying the stores, looking at hours of operation, looking at merchandising, assessing vacancies, and mapping all of this. So there's a complete inventory of commercial space that'll come along with this market information, mapping and identification of different opportunities for new businesses and new investment throughout town. I mentioned the online survey. This was conducted back in March and April. We got more than 200 responses from Bush residents on the online survey, and it revealed a number of things. The first question there, we asked folks, outside of Brush, where do you regularly go for shopping? I don't think some of the top responses will necessarily surprise you. Certainly Fort Morgan, the Greeley area, very strong. The third, online. And I think this response would be much different than it was obviously 15 years ago. Patterns have changed, habits have changed. Most of us now are using the internet, if not to buy things, certainly to shop and look at things. And we noticed a disconnect. While most of the residents are using, at least the residents who responded to this, are using web-based platforms to shop, most of the businesses here do not have a web presence, and that's going to be one of our recommendations coming out of it. Sort of a practical recommendation, but something that we think could improve business for a lot of the existing stores and shops. We asked folks how often they visited downtown, and there's pretty strong loyalty toward downtown Brush. Almost 40% visit downtown once a week or more. Only about 20% of the town almost never visits the downtown business district. On this slide, in our survey, we asked residents to say what do they like about town, what do they like about Brush, and the way this works is the more often people type in an answer, and when we compile it all together, the larger the word is in this what's called a word cloud. So folks like the small town feel, the friendliness, the sense of community in Brush. I don't think any of these values would necessarily surprise anyone here. But it's not necessarily uniform throughout eastern Colorado that we find these kinds of responses. And honestly, I think it may be a differentiator when we look at Brush versus Fort Morgan moving forward. Other results on this, we asked Brush residents, what do you buy in town and what do you leave town for? So on the top, people frequent Brush area businesses for restaurants, hardware, groceries, banking, medical services, no surprise. What do they leave town for? Well, many of the same things, but clothing and accessories was a big one. Again, restaurants, groceries, sporting goods, and hardware. And that list, we also looked at our data to sort of match up between what the data says and then what your residents say to really identify opportunities. On this slide, we're asking residents to say, what do you want the town to be? Looking into the future, what are some of the qualities that you want to see in Brush? And some of the other themes were repeated in terms of a sense of community and a friendly place, small town values, but also we want the place to grow. We want the place to grow, we want the place to be prosperous moving forward. And our last question on this is we gave folks about a dozen different ideas. If we were going to improve Brush, what would be some of the most important things that we should do to improve the community? Number one, attract more jobs, more businesses, more opportunities. Secondly, more activities for families. A rec center popped up over and over again. Redevelop blighted and vacant properties. Certainly that's an issue in the downtown area. And more housing, as we mentioned earlier in the presentation. The report looks at some case studies, some best practices, if you will. And we tried to look at high plains, small towns that have had success with business development, recruiting investment, having a vital downtown area. So there are a variety of towns that we looked at. Most of these have had national Main Street Awards. That's one thing that drew us to them in terms of the research. I won't go into detail now, but when Andrea joins me, she's going to talk about some recommendations, and some of these ideas we have borrowed from some of these other communities that we thought maybe could work here. The last items I'll talk about and then hand it over to Andrea is just 5 key conclusions from all of this. So one thing we think is really important, we compile all this market data and we go out and we ask the community what they would like, but ultimately what does that mean and how do we use the information? So we really came up with 5 key conclusions on this. One, and this gets to how do we differentiate in Morgan County, how do we differentiate from Fort Morgan? And really, it's fairly unique, and I don't think, again, this is anything that is revolutionary here that we're talking about, but the compact, walkable scale of downtown Brush really is, it's different. It's different, it's unique to this county. and is something not to be taken for granted. So there's a sense of community here. There are values that are embodied here that we think are actually something that you can build on in your economic development strategy. It's something that would be helpful to attract new businesses and investment here. A second major conclusion is that while downtown remains a niche opportunity, in other words, downtown's is best suited for small, local, independent business concepts. There is opportunity by I-76 for more chains, franchises, and more aggressive, if you will, business options out there. I think you're already seeing that in play. There are some interesting opportunities happening from changes in the marketplace. Retail in general is completely in transition and in flux right now. So, for example, the notion of Penny's closing not only in Fort Morgan, but also in Sterling, we think creates opportunity. Creates opportunity for Brush, and for some of you this may be a long time coming. We heard from the mayor earlier today that 2002 is a year that a lot of folks here remember, because that's when the Walmart store opened and a lot of Main Street started to empty out. Well, you may see some reverse trending on that, and I think the closing of the Penny stores create an opportunity where local people can really recreate some of those elements that you find in Penny's, not the whole store, but can recreate some of those elements in some of the storefronts in the downtown area. So our third conclusion is that downtown Brush really has great opportunities for more local independent business concepts moving forward. A fourth conclusion, and we think this may be new in terms of thinking about economic development here, is that downtown really should be viewed as an amenity that supports some of your anchor employers. So the larger employers here in health, the school district, they're competing with every town in the country when they have a vacancy. So when they need a nurse, when they need a doctor, when they need a teacher, they're recruiting with a lot of folks. And if you're recruiting, whether it's from Western Kansas or it's from the Front Range of Colorado, there's going to be an expectation, particularly with skilled employees, to have some of the amenities of some of the larger towns that they may be leaving behind. So we see downtown as a recruitment amenity. And honestly, we don't think it takes a lot of critical mass. You know this, but if we could get 2 or 3 restaurants, if we could get 4 or 5 boutique stores to really thrive downtown, it starts to create that environment that we think could also help some of the larger employers here. And connecting the dots further, we think there's some opportunities for new partnerships of maybe getting some of the anchor employers here, again, notably in healthcare and in education, to work with the town and to work with the downtown businesses on downtown improvements. We feel that there's an enlightened self-interest in all of that. And then lastly, downtown can really build on existing special events and attractions. The Chamber, other partners down here do a great job with special events that attract people down here. Also, we're suggesting that maybe we look at some of the existing attractions in a different way. The image on the slide, if we were looking at downtown as a shopping mall, I would call that image Nordstrom's. So it's your library, and your library draws a lot of people into Brush, but it's drawing a lot of people just to block off the downtown core. So how do we connect all of that, all that energy, and all those folks who are already coming down to the library, and how do we market some of the downtown business opportunities and create additional experiences downtown that can connect to an existing energy center like the library? So Andrea's going to join me, and with our last 3 to 5 minutes, we were told very specifically about our time frame, which we will respect. Andrea's going to run through just some of the ideas, highlights of some of the ideas that have popped up through this.
Hi, thanks. So yeah, as Brad mentioned, our case study research really revealed a lot of recommendations and strategies that the city together with the Chamber of Commerce can implement. And we did discover that the Chamber is already really proactive in doing a lot of these things, but we have a ton of recommendations in our report, but I'm just going to go through a few to highlight them. So we kind of had 4 overarching recommendation areas. The first is marketing and customer service. And if I had to choose one thing that the Brush business community can really embrace, is for every business to have a website. It's so crucial, and it's a quick win. It's an easy, relatively low-cost way to advertise and to build trust and credibility with the tourists and visitors the businesses are looking to attract. Another big one is storefront design and visual merchandising. The visual appeal of a storefront can be the deciding factor for a customer on whether or not they stop in a business. And this is particularly true of non-locals who are not familiar with the community. You all know what's here because you live here, but there's a lot of little, quick, creative things you can do to enhance a storefront, to make it more inviting, whether it's having more merchandise and racks and bins on the sidewalk. The chamber could coordinate sidewalk days where there's more activity at the street level and it kind of brings people in the stores. The second overarching recommendation area is local independent concepts for restaurants and stores. And with clothing and accessories, it was clear from the survey and the market analysis that Brush could support a small clothing store, particularly one that offers men's and children's apparel at reasonable price points. And our report gets into more detail on different formats and ownership structures for a small town clothing store and how to kind of recruit that or own it at the community level. We also think that Brush can support a couple more family-friendly, modern restaurants, maybe a brew pub. This sort of thing, especially with outdoor seating, could really be a key amenity for people here for events or for youth sporting tournaments, things like that. And yeah, I think there's some good examples in our case studies that we list in the report of how you can operate a sporting goods store and craft store, perhaps, things like that. Placemaking is our third kind of recommendation area. And placemaking is a multifaceted approach to the design of public spaces that really gets at the heart and soul of a community. And usually it's tied in with public art, whether it's murals or sculptures, things like that. And wayfinding is a big piece of this. Wayfinding is essentially signage that lets tourists and visitors know where the downtown is and where other things are in relation to that. We think that it would be great to at least consider having a downtown Brush billboard on I-76 like they do in Sterling. So to have conversations with CDOT about how to get that process started. And then finally, we noted in our report that there's a lot of overarching needs here beyond just retail and economic development. Housing is huge. Childcare, there's a notable lack of childcare services here. The central school and the prison are two really big facilities that you have to decide what to do with and how to go about that. So we outline in the report a lot of the strategies for that. And yeah, would you add anything to that? So there's a lot there. We tried to include as many quick wins as possible that you can implement within the next couple of years and that are attainable and realistic. But yeah, we just wanted to highlight some of those, and we're open to questions.
Questions, comments? Again, we gave you the Cliff Notes version. There's about a fair amount of material, but certainly as much time as you'd like tonight. We're happy to take questions or comments.
We also have we had a raffle as part of our online survey, and we can announce the winner tonight. We randomly picked a number, and then so we can announce that at some point.
All right. Are there questions?
I do have a question. Men's and children's clothing. And I've wanted for years to open a women's apparel store here. And I just wonder why men's and children's, but not women's.
This is what we heard from the survey. There were a dozen people that said men's and children's clothing. I think there were a couple that did mention women's as well, but that kind of stood out to me as as a need.
Wow. Thank you.
I think any clothing, honestly, clothing and accessories, if done the right way, because again, retail's always risky when you go leakage analysis, and then with the closing of the penny stores, we just see an opportunity for some sort of clothing. So Andrew's correct. In the surveys that we did in the community, there were a lot of requests for men's and children's clothing. Interestingly, I think 3/4 of our respondents on the survey were female. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So.
That stood out to us.
Wow. Okay then.
But I think in a town and a market of this size, and if we're really trying to create specialty experience down there, you got to do all the above. You know, if I were going to open a clothing store, I would do all of it. I would do a little bit of men, a little bit of women, a little bit of children. I would try to be unique. There might be some consignment element to all of this. A whole variety of different concepts in one, and that's something else we talked about at lunch today, because retail is tough in a market of this size, particularly with Fort Morgan so close, and with people's patterns established, whether Penny's is there or not. So another tip I would suggest is, if I was thinking of opening a store here, I would think of what 2 or 3 concepts could I package together in one storefront. So I'm not reliant on just one retail concept, but there's 2 or 3 that can complement one another. And sometimes, for example, I was recently in a small town in Indiana, and they had crafts, and they had some clothing, and they had some old vinyl records that they were selling. They had a coffee shop in the back of the store, and most importantly, they had great service. And that's another element in here that we emphasize. How is Brush going to distinguish itself in this age when we're getting more reliant on online and large store formats? It's really 2 things. It's service and experience. Service is how you're treated when you go in the store, obviously. And there's some work to do here. The hours are inconsistent. Not all of the shopkeepers, when Andrea, my colleague, entered the store, were necessarily attentive or honestly welcoming. So I think there's some work to be done there. The people that are succeeding here, very high quality service, state of the art, very welcoming, very friendly. And then lastly, when we talk about experience, it's just not the experience in the store, but it's the experience on Clayton, in downtown, to make sure that it is welcoming, that it's comfortable and inviting. And that gets to some of the signage and some of the other recommendations that we made as well.
Yeah. Any others?
What were some of your recommendations for Central School?
Well, that's a really interesting question. You might be aware that Tyler and Melody recently went to a conference where they had a whole session dedicated to what to do with the Central School in Brush, Colorado. And there are a lot of interesting ideas that came out of it. And based on those observations and the feasibility study, it seems like housing is probably not the most feasible thing to happen there, but perhaps to redevelop a portion of the school for a mixture of community and commercial uses. I think Brewpub was thrown around a bit. The idea of a wellness center to have some medical offices in there. Regardless, it won't be a cheap project, but it seems like the community is really invested in seeing something happen with that.
I had one more question for you. On the big signage on I-76, how much does that cost, and would you put it on the east side of the interstate or like the west side as people are coming into town? And what would be the approximate cost on something like that?
Well, honestly, I can't tell you what billboards go these days. It sort of depends on where you put it. I will say this: where I would start is not necessarily with the highway billboard. I would start at the off ramp, because it's actually surprising when you come off the off ramp at 76. There's nothing that says downtown, with an arrow, and even CDOT, you can do that. You can get a basic green sign downtown and an arrow, and from both exits. I would start there, and there may be some inexpensive ways to lead people down the street into the downtown area. I honestly don't know which side I would start with. I think actually exciting to see two little green signs that say downtown.
Yes, that, we need to do it. We definitely do. And it's been a great report. The lunchtime one was very good too, so thank you. You guys did great. Anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks.
thank you. We've enjoyed it. We've, while this engagement through Main Street, with us, technically ends at the end of the month, we're nearby, we do this kind of work, and we've told staff, we've told Melody at the chamber that we are, happy to be an ongoing resource. And oftentimes we don't, like the billboard sign, we may not know the answer, but usually we do know other communities or contacts within the state that know answers, and we're happy to be a resource as the town pursues these ideas.
Yep. And we will get a report, right? Is that?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
by May 31st, we'll have the final, so that's
All right.
coming right up. And then we're also gonna create a 2-page front and back, basically executive summary of all this. It can kind of be used as a marketing, piece to, existing businesses or, potential investors.
So yeah, Tyler, Melody, they're our first line here to review the report and make sure that we presented everything accurately, that we're on track to deliver by the end of the month.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's the winner?
Oh, yes, okay, so Susan Balderston.
All right. Yep. Very good.
Hey.
So, Tyler will deliver the winning gift basket.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She'll appreciate that.
Turn the lights back on. Tyler, you're down again for the Ready Grant.
All right, first time I've ever been back to back at the microphone.
Yeah.
All right, so for the Ready Grant, the Rural Economic Development Initiative, I can't remember if it was last council meeting or the one before, but I spoke that we were preparing for tonight, which is we're looking to get a signature on the Ready Grant. This is for the work that we've been doing in discussions up at the feedlot, and we want to put some initial infrastructure in there. We're working with a private business who is very interested, in discussions have been going well with them putting in a facility, but of course you have to have infrastructure out there, which would be water, wastewater, roads, upgrades on electricity. And so we've been working with an engineer to get all the different pieces together with costs and contracts and ideas and cooperation and so on. And in the meantime, I've been working on the Ready Grant, which was in your application that we're going to be presenting. This is due at the end of the month. There could be a couple minor changes and tweaks up until that point as things come forward. Nothing significant, but we came to council tonight to get the approval for the Ready Grant, so we can submit that, and we're submitting it for $441,000 is what we're requesting. And the Ready Grant is funds through Department of Local Affairs, a program that they put in place for rural communities to help them with the economic development efforts. Any questions?
This grant is one that we had applied for in the past, and the community of Brush had received 2 grants at one point in time. One was through the city, one was through a private entity in the city, and both those projects didn't work out. And so because you had to have that business actually come to fruition, you couldn't just take the money and not have the economic development that you wanted. So we weren't able to capitalize on it then, but this is turning out to be probably even a better deal if it all works out, and we get that 100% funding that we're asking for.
All right. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the Ready Grant application.
Motion and a second. Any other questions? Roll call vote.
Mayor Schomburger,
Yes.
Councilor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councilor Anderson,
Yes.
Councilor Baker,
Yes.
Councilor Becker,
Yes.
Councilor Dykes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler.
Finance.
I make a motion that we approve disbursements and payroll from May 8th through the 22nd of 2017, totaling $213,157.41.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mayor Schomburger,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Baker,
Yes.
Counselor Becker,
Yes.
Counselor Dykes.
Yes.
Moving on to staff reports. Finance. Joanne.
I have nothing this evening.
All right. Police. Travis.
Over the last 2 weeks, we've had 667 calls for service. Last week, we responded to an incident at the middle school. Responded pretty quick, was able to deal with it, and luckily we had a lot of help. I don't know where they come from, but they just showed up, so that was pretty neat. Sheriff's Office and the State Patrol. We had a report of a man walking towards the middle school with a gun, and luckily that wasn't actually the case, but we thank the citizen for calling us because it could have turned out to actually be that. So, and then this week we're going to be issuing 8 citations after multiple warnings for code violations.
Okay. Public Works. Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Several items I'd like to bring to you tonight. One is our downtown project is still ongoing, and the stormwater. We've crossed Colorado Avenue, and we expect to have that paved back starting tomorrow at 10, and hopefully have that entire area, that intersection of Colorado and the east side of Colorado on Edmonds opened up by about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So the construction project limits will be just to that eastern block, the 300 block of Edmonds. Second, we have our street projects coming up here shortly. This will be our Emerson Street, Elm Street, and Mill Street projects. We were on schedule to start the Elm Street project on the 29th, the 30th. However, with the rains we've experienced, the contractors had to push that back to June 5th. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we will be holding a community meeting down on Elm Street to talk with the residents down there, kind of visit with them, let them know about the impacts that they're going to experience. Mainly, these are going to be what we're going to be doing. And there's going to be limited access as well as new parking issues, trash collection, public safety, those types of items. Shortly after we get done with that, we will be having additional community meetings, especially around the Emerson area as well as the Mill Street area, to visit about the impacts that will be experienced in those. Also, I have the results of the spring cleanup in your packet. Most notably, that we collected an extra approximately 36 3/4 tons of refuse, 80 mattresses, and we had 14 non-tube type monitors, 10 computers, 15 VCRs, 1 record player, and 159 tube type TVs. Just want to bring to your attention that this is a 3-fold increase of what we collected last year. We only collected 55 tube type TVs, so it was a pretty significant collection. So, and then finally, we we had alleyways. The rain has taken its toll on our alleyways, so our crews will be out and about in the alleys. So just making sure that if you do receive complaints, we are working towards getting those smoothed out. The moisture was pretty damaging, took its toll. And then finally, I did meet with CDOT today, had an engineer come down and inspecting the 300, 400, 500 blocks of Edison Street, US 34. As everybody knows, it's coming apart fast, it's unraveling. We're going to, after his inspection today, we'll be able to now make some temporary patches to those failing areas, kind of give it a little bit better drivability than what we have right now. They only have to, when I say temporary, I'm talking about 1 or 2 years worth of patching that has to hold up, because they are looking at actually paving, probably starting, or doing a resurfacing of 34, starting in 2019. So if we can just hold it together that long, we should be able to hopefully get a new 34 together.
Well, didn't they patch not too long ago down there?
That was the city.
Okay, so we did that before. Yep. All right.
Can I ask you about mosquitoes?
Are we starting to experience them?
Well, whenever I get bit at the middle school for the first time, I always talk to you.
Okay. I'll check to see where the street department is on that. We do have our mosquito sprayer calibrated, and we did send our employees to the classes that we were required to do, and so it's been calibrated. We're ready to go once we start experiencing, get the dunks out.
Always remind you.
Thank you.
Start on my side of the city first, would you?
And a record player. Oh my gosh, that's an antique. So, yeah.
I just bought a new one.
Yeah. All right.
Lionel's back.
I got a pile of records from years
Yeah.
ago.
Moving on to marketing, Tyler.
Nothing to report tonight.
All right. City clerk, Andrea.
Just remind you to look at the dates in your calendar, and I'm still waiting to hear a date for the city-county meeting in Hill Rose. As soon as we get it, I'll let you know.
City administrator.
A couple items. Last week, the city and the school district, we worked together on a pilot community garden, and there's approximately 5 spots that are available there. Approximate sizes 20 foot long, 10 feet wide for each one of those plots. And if anyone's interested, just contact City Hall at 842-5001 and to get put on a list, and then we'll give you a call up. But we're hoping to get a few more gardeners out there from the community, and also the school district may have a teacher or principal that might be interested as well. It's a pilot program, so we're just gonna slowly bring this about and see how it works. So that's exciting news. Lots of work around town between the Loves, Ebenezer's, the ambulance barn. We're excited to see all that work, and you can see when you talk to people around the community, they're always telling you about, it seems to be pretty darn busy these days in the community. And when you hear from law enforcement, there's pretty busy there in law enforcement. So things are really happening in Brush. A lot of things moving along. With some of the projects that Dale talked about, the street projects, in years past, the city used to do block parties. Whenever a new street was completed, then we would do a block party. So that might be something that the council might be interested in doing, and it's just kind of celebrating a new street being put in town. And Elm Street is a brand new asphalt street. The other two are replacements of existing streets or sections of different streets. So as we get a little bit closer, we'll let council know, and if you guys want to go that direction, we can do a small celebration for each one of those blocks. That's all I have.
All right. Yeah, I just worry on traffic on Elm Street. How do you get parking? How do you get people across? You could have fun. So, any council reports?
I have a couple things that have kind of come up. Along that line of the expansion with Ebenezer and the schools and Loves, I've had several calls asking what it's going to take, and will this development help us get a red light at 34? What do we have to do? Because you're not going to get all that traffic at Loves and everywhere off of the highway. That 34 is going to get even worse.
Yeah, the in the past on 34 and Hospital Road area that you're talking about, we've had a, I'm trying to remember the name of the study, a traffic signal warrant study is what they're called. And if I remember right, there's 5 or 6 areas that need to score high enough for the state to put in a traffic signal. And at the time that we did it, there was probably 40 or 50 traffic signals throughout the state that would be before this one, but this one didn't even hit the bottom of the threshold as far as warranting one, because there hadn't been significant accidents and there's a lot of different components to it. And so the same engineer that Dell visited with today might be the first person to talk to again to see about another warrant study. Those traffic signals can get pretty expensive, so it's cost prohibitive for the city to install those. But if there's a way to get it higher up on the list of the states and there's a possibility for them to fund it, that might be the best route to go.
Okay, because that was one. The other one was a few years back, Fort Morgan put in a lot more stop signs to help with the speed and the accidents and things. And I've been asked how come we don't throw in some, because we've got some blocks that are mighty fast coming from that high school that go multiple blocks without stop signs. And so I've just had several parents ask why we don't have a few more just pop up somewhere to try and slow things down.
Okay, well, if there's ever any specific locations,
I got them at home, I can send them
yeah,
to
get
you.
them to me, because I send those on to Dell and the chief to review those to see what we can do. I do know that years ago We started the replacement of the existing traffic signs and those type of things because they went to a different reflectivity and different dimensions, and I think we've got majority of the town already replaced with those. And then there are some areas in town, I'm not sure of the history, but there's some of the blocks that have never had stop signs. Is it east and west, or I can't remember. But some of them just never have had them, and so something that we can definitely look at, especially if you give us that list. We'll
Yeah, I have a
take a look
on
at
that
those.
one. That's all I have.
That reminds me, I did have a complaint that I should pass along to Chief. Well, somebody asked me if you could enforce the speed limit along that section west of Hospital Road going out of town on Highway 34.
They do.
Well,
I've
I
seen
know.
people get tickets there. but
I have as well, but you know,
Because I've heard it being identified as a speed trap.
well,
Heard other citizens complain and say, yeah, those cops are sitting down there waiting to catch it.
you know,
It's like,
Vicki,
slow down.
I sat at the community garden year before last, and I spent a lot of time down there, and I saw infractions. I saw people texting. I saw people looking down and they weren't watching what they were doing and they were texting. I saw speeding. I saw people picking up speed as they're going out of town, trucks especially. So for what it's worth, I'm going to pass it along for this person. Thank you.
And we are in the process of seeing about getting that changed too, that speed limit.
I had a meeting with CDOT earlier this month, and they were very helpful in the procedures and guidance in how to make this happen. So there's a lot of things that need to come together before we actually get that turned into the state.
Okay.
And another thing that he brought up just while I'm, we did have a community meeting, and some folks did come in that night. I think it was 2 council sessions ago, 2 maybe 3 now. One person came in and he said that his whole neighborhood would have shown up except for that they weren't aware that there was a meeting that night. I don't know if there's still time, but if it's possible, maybe we could even consider having another one.
We already made the decision on that.
Well, I know, but didn't you have comments? Weren't you adding comments to the report that yours?
No, not at this point.
So would it be worth our while to have another one?
I don't think so, because from what he was, that person, if I'm the same person, what he was getting at is there would be more people that were in favor of lowering the speed limit.
Yes.
And that's what we decided to do, so.
And that's what I told him, but I would pass it along because I didn't know if the number of comments made a difference, or if it was just one decision. So.
It was just the one decision by council.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Are we set? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
We are adjourned. We'll have work session coming right up.